Hello, everyone. I am Matt Williamson. Happy Super Bowl week. I know the Steelers aren't in it, but it is still Super Bowl week, and Super Bowl week is awesome, and the Super Bowl is awesome, and that's what we all strive for, right? So, happy Super Bowl week. Follow me on Twitter at Williamson NFL. Please spread the word. What I've been promising you guys a mailbag for a while, and a lot of good questions. It was tough to sort through the best ones. So I wanted to take like 5 or 6 broad topic things and some specific stuff as well. Dig in heavy here. So my man Michael Adesso asked, do you think the Steelers are going to break the mold of their typical RB profile and instead go for the faster, shiftier type guys like Devin Neal or RJ Harvey in the draft? No more Damian Martinez or Oli Gordon types, please. This is a tough one. So actually, it's not a tough one. I don't think they'll break their mold. I think AFC North football, physical football team, it's the makeup of who this team is, that they are going to want someone 220 pounds plus. Yeah, I do believe that as the next Najee. And I know that doesn't sound great. But I also think physicality in this league is very important. Now, I want to dig into this deeper. There's so many good running backs in this draft. I would consider taking 2, even a 3rd rounder and a 7th rounder. I've told you before, Mel Kiper has 35 running backs with a draftable grade. Now, I wouldn't mind. Well, let's go back a second here. Like the Eagles. The Eagles don't get many big plays in the passing game. They generate explosives on the ground. Can the Steelers get to that point? Of course, they're not going to have Saquon Barkley. But can they get to that point where they create more explosions when they get their guys in the open field? Obviously, that's not Najee's game, and I think that's a big reason he might go. And I think your question, Michael, is great because are we just doing the same thing over and over with big, slow backs that don't have explosive potential? And for that matter, that's then the argument of, well, do you use an earlier pick on a guy like Hampton from North Carolina that can provide all those things? And I'm not super psyched about using a top 2, certainly not a top 2 round pick on a running back on such a deep draft. And I really like the names you mentioned, Neal and Harvey. And you might be selling their physicality a little short. I think Neal's about 220 pounds. But they don't run like Najee. I mean, they're not Jerome Bettis. I know what you're saying. I know exactly what you're saying. This is why I took the question. But back to 2 running backs. If you go with a big physical 3rd round back, Warren, and a 7th round back that is maybe slightly under 200 pounds or hovering around 200 pounds, that's your new kickoff returner. I'm not saying he's like Darren Sproles, but he has long speed. He has some explosion to the mix. And there's been some instances, like the Packers took Jamal Williams and then they took Aaron Jones a couple rounds later. And Jones was a better player, but they liked both. It's a deep, deep group of backs. So maybe you get 2 different types that are on each side of Warren. You know what I mean? Like one that's faster than Warren, but smaller. One that's bigger and more physical than Warren, but slower. And I bet that's the approach they take. I don't know if they'll take the 2nd, but I would be shocked if they don't at least get a big-time priority free agent after drafting one as well. But there are so many backs in this draft. I don't know that it has to be one or the other. And I know what you're saying about Oli Gordon and Damian Martinez. They're big physical pounders, but they're not going to break the game open. So it's a dilemma. Where do the explosives come from? And they do have a lot of 10-plus yard runs. They have no 40-yard runs. And, there's not many of those backs on the planet. You got to pay for them. BetOnline is your world's most trusted betting platform and your number 1 source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with all the action, the ability to watch the games as they happen, with the largest selection of odds on everything from football, NBA and college basketball, NHL, to UFC and MMA. Head to BetOnline today to get on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. BetOnline, the game starts here. Let's get back to these questions. Steelers takeaways asks, teams throwing quickly. Are the Steelers playing too much off wide receivers considering how quickly teams are throwing? I think so. I think overall the defense is far too vanilla and you're not maximizing a lot of really, really good players, especially the pass rush. And a big problem to me is they just don't have the corners to press. I've talked about this a lot. I'm going to continue to talk about it. I am open to the idea that maybe Trice can provide that opposite Porter, but I want to be surer than that. I mean, I need a high pick or a free agent, which we'll get to some names here in a minute, of corners opposite Porter, because I can't just play off coverage and give up slant after slant after slant, because it nullifies your great pass rush. Plus, I want to blitz more. I want to be the most aggressive Flores-esque type defense in this league, because you're not going to have a Super Bowl caliber offense. But if you can have the best defense that causes havoc, that hits quarterbacks, that presses receivers to the line of scrimmage, and it's just a real pain in the ass to play against, I think you can, and you're not that far from that. That's the thing. It's not like, I want the next Josh Allen. Well, you're not getting that, but I can build a defense where I can get to exactly what I said, where it's Blitzburg, it's nuts. You're getting Watt one-on-one more often, which leads me to this question from Thomas Petrie is, you had mentioned that the Steelers should address defensive back in free agency. DJ Reed, he's a Jet. Byron Murphy's a Viking on that list. Yes, they absolutely are. And I will say Murphy is probably my favorite. He's going to be expensive. 27 years old. These are the other names to know. And it's not a bad group. I mean, I would 100% condone making your biggest ticket item outside the organization one of these corners. Plug them in opposite Porter for all those reasons I talked about. Trice is your 3. Find a slot in the 4th round or something like that. Draft a defensive tackle high, and then basically everything else you do is offense. Weapons, galore. But you mentioned DJ Reed of the Jets. He would be very good in this capacity. 28 years old, as is Charvarius Ward from the Niners. Now, these guys aren't, Patrick Surtain or Mel Blount, but they're real good number 2s that I don't mind paying or maybe even overpaying a little bit. Russell Douglas from the Bills. He's a little older. He's going to be 30 next season at some point. He's got size. He's been good. Carlton Davis of the Lions. His contract's up again. He's 28. Asante Samuel Jr. is a guy I like a lot. He's only 25 right now. Murphy's my favorite, no question. But my sleeper guy that could really work out is another 25-year-old from the Saints, Paulson Adebo. He has size. He has physicality. He started the 2024 season on fire, and it looked like he really turned the corner. But he broke his femur. So that's going to hurt his availability or hurt his earning power. But it's a broken bone. I mean, he's going to rebound from that. And he'd be a little cheaper. It doesn't mean I want to necessarily go cheap at this position. But that's one of my favorite names when I look at things like projected contracts, things like that. But hey, if you went all in on a guy like Murphy, who also has really elevated his game, and sometimes it takes corners till they're 27 or so to really be, hitting their stride. And DJ Reed's another good name. I like both the names you mentioned. But I just gave you 6 or 7, all of whom would fit the bill of better than Dante Jackson and allow this defense to be all those things I mentioned. 2 more questions. Matt Sable asks, any chance Mike McCarthy to come in with a fresh set of eyes and an offensive senior assistant? Could there be an equivalent for the defense like Vrabel was for the Browns last year? I love the McCarthy idea. And someone asked me this a couple weeks ago in a mailbag and just phrased it differently. We were talking about assistant coaches. Do they have enough? Do they not? I know that's been a big topic of contention lately. And my big thing was, I would love to see them get some sort of dude like McCarthy, who happens to be from the area, that really has never been employed by the team. And I mean that just because come in totally fresh. You have a lot of pelts on the wall already. You have a lot of respect when you walk in the door. The people will listen to you, including Tomlin, because you've won games. You've been around the block. You demand respect because of your resume. And particularly, I'd rather have one on defense, but either side would be great. Senior assistant, any of those type of things. They don't maybe even game plan that much during the week. Whatever you do, however you structure it. But I think that's a wonderful idea, as opposed to churning through guys that have been in the organization. I want someone that's never been to St. Vincent's, you know what I mean? But has done a lot in this league, either side of the ball. But Tomlin and that person would have to have mutual respect, and he'd have to be able to speak up in the room, which I don't think would be as big a problem as some of you probably think, especially if it was mandated from the top, that we want to add this set of eyes. It's not a threat to you, coach, but we need to add something from outside the organization, from a winning coach in this league, just to cross-check. You know what I mean? Like, just to, give us different ideas. Boy, try doing this. Or, here's a good example. Here's the last question I got for the day. It's from my man, Joey Bag of Donuts. Doesn't it seem like every season the team gets tired at the end? And I think you're right. I mean, we're starting to see a pattern here. Now, I can't talk out both sides of my mouth because every year during the preseason, I crush the Bengals for not playing any of their guys. And then inevitably, the first month of the season, Cincinnati goes 1-3 or 0-4, or doesn't look like the juggernaut offense they can be. And in a year like this, you end up not in the playoffs if you're Cincinnati. Now, is the reciprocal or the opposite happening with the Steelers? Because I will tell you, and I don't go to 32 training camps, but I will tell you, their training camp and their practice habits are pretty much as physical as anyone out there. Definitely their training camp. And does that take a toll? Is it time to take a step back and maybe bounce it off another head coach or a different sports science people and say, we love the tone we set in Latrobe. But is that one of the reasons? I'm just throwing this out here because I'm not either one of those people. I'm not a sports science person. But maybe we need to regulate things and save it a little bit for late in the season. Or our snap counts not being monitored as much as they should be for long-term success. If you're winning by 10 in the fourth quarter, maybe Cam Hayward only plays 8 fourth quarter snaps unless something weird happens, or Watt, or whomever. Because I don't think depth has been a specific problem. It's really, especially during the Omar Khan era, I think he's done a real good job addressing depth, churning the bottom of the roster, finding NFL people, Skoranek, those type of dudes that are useful in several capacities. So I don't think that's it. But I do think you have to look at it and be like, well, why is the end not as good as the beginning? Now, the low-hanging fruit here, and this year epitomizes this to no end, but the schedule, especially for headliner teams that everybody wants to see on TV, and the Steelers are a victim of that as well as a beneficiary of that. And they have a harder division than most. They're going to backload schedules. And obviously the playoffs is a whole different beast. It's a whole different monster that they have not been able to slay at all. So I think going forward, it won't be as bad as 2024. But I would think as a rule of thumb, the first half of the season for a team like the Steelers is going to be, on paper, when the schedule comes out, easier than the back half too. But this isn't new, Now what do we do to adjust? It's kind of like my Bengals argument. Maybe Burrow should play week 3 of the preseason with Chase and not come out flat, Well, maybe the Steelers need to do something too to not finish the season flat. All right, everyone, great stuff. It is Super Bowl week. I don't know how much Super Bowl stuff I'll be doing, But, I'll be back to you soon. All right, take care.